see what's coming up here. Alex, great. Thanks, Christine. Everyone else not responding. That's fine. I don't mind being ignored. Oh, yeah. Sam is great. Sheldon is great. Fabulous. So great to see everyone who's finding it a very interesting time on the planet right now, because we've certainly got a lot going on. Lexi, you're doing great. So what we'll do is we're going to get straight on with it and start with the parable of the Dragnet. William, I'm with stupid applies a lot this year. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment, William. So I just shake my head, and the biggest lesson that I'm learning right now is this whole year seems to be about going inward and moving beyond the duality of what goes on in the physical world, which is just a lower dense world, but isn't really all that real anyway. That's what I'm actually realizing, that I actually opened Deepak Chopra's one of his books this morning, and I just got led to a particular affirmation, and basically the affirmation was, I am not my body, I am simply recycled earth. And that kept me busy for a long time. I thought, wow, that's actually really true, because we aren't our body. And he goes, we're not. And then it also, the next part was, I am not my thoughts and I am not my emotions. And I thought that's actually really true too, because if you were your thoughts or your emotions, as Chopra said, then you wouldn't be observing them. So clearly we aren't actually our thoughts or our emotions. That's someone else who we're observing. And we are just a higher level, multi-dimensional light body God living in a lower human animal body matter of flesh. So there's something to fuck with your head for the day to get things started. So anyway, while you're processing that little whirlwind bombshell, let's begin with the prayer of Yeshua, the Lord's Prayer. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound, light, and vibration, may your light be experienced in my utmost holiest, in the holy place and the holiest of all. By heavenly domain approaches, your kingdom comes, your higher government and your higher realms come into this earthly realm today. Let your higher divine plan be true and come to pass in this universe, in all that vibrates and exists in this universe, just as on earth, that is material and dense. Bring your higher realms, your higher vibration, your higher kingdom, your higher consciousness light beings into these realms of space and time, of linear, of lower level, and migrate, merge, and transform, realizing that this is all just matter and energy. Give us wisdom, understanding, assistance for our daily need, our daily bread, and our higher spiritual enlightenment. And detach the fetters of fault karmically that bind us in the same way that we release the guilt of others. Let us not be caught up in superficial things, materialism, common temptations, but let us be freed from all which keeps us from our true purpose. From you comes the all-working will, the lively strength to act, the song that beautifies all and renews itself from age to age. Amen. Sealed in trust, faith, and truth, confirmed of our entire being. Who likes this version of the Lord's Prayer, by the way? The one that we read pretty regularly. Yeah, Fiona, Christine, yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's very activating. I love this one. Because it was meant to be prayed from a heart, and it's a vibratory prayer. That was the purpose of this prayer. So, and the truth is, what I'm actually planning to do in our next week, Steve Plummer speaking, and then after that, I'll be finishing this off with an integration session on the parables. Then I'm actually looking at doing a series on the Lord's Prayer and actually exploring all these different aspects of it, because as you will see, the Lord's Prayer has so many different levels of it. So there's probably about 6 or 7 or 8 levels in this one as well. So I'm sure you will enjoy that, and teaching you a higher way to pray using the Lord's Prayer. So the day's healing card, start the day. This is the one I got, which was quite interesting, and I thought, okay, that's pretty fascinating. So the dream. Now this is a bit of a confronting one. So this one here, some enchanted evening. So basically, this was the ones here. So pretty much what it's saying here is this kind of what's called fantasy belief that you're going to meet some kind of soulmate, whether it's a person, a business dream, that once you set your business up and sold it for millions, or once you've become a politician, or once you become the president of the US or whatever, that now everything will come good. So basically it's wrong. This fantasy that songwriters and poets are so fond of perpetuating has its roots in memories of the room where we were so secure and at one with our mothers. It is no wonder we've hankered to return to that place. But to be brutally is a childish place. So it says, nobody, whether it's your current mate or some dreamed of partner in the future, has any obligation to deliver your happiness on the platter, nor could they, even if they wanted to. Real love comes not from trying to solve our neediness by depending on another, but by developing our own inner richness and maturity. When we have so much love to give that we naturally draw others towards us. And it's quite a powerful one. And this one, when I read this, I was thinking, wow, this is pretty deep and pretty rich. And in fact, In the Way of the Superior Man, a book by David Data about a man finding true love, he actually says that. He goes, a man finds true love through finding his higher life purpose. And he said, and then even once he finds his higher life purpose and thinks he's found love in a woman, he realizes even that love is illusory, and that all the way along, he was always seeking for God. A very powerful one. And so true for any of you who know that once you actually open your heart as a man, you will actually realize that that's what you're always seeking for all along. And probably the same as a woman too. But all along, you were always seeking for God. So, very powerful, isn't it? So, going more within. And that's been my message in this whole last week, going more within for myself, and actually saying that there's not really all that much good to look at outside. And I'll be giving you a scripture which I was actually given for myself and for the planet, or just for the planet, what's going on, which isn't particularly pleasant, but is a great opportunity to go in with and go deeper. So all religious people, it says, we come into this world, we go alone. All togetherness is illusory. The very idea of togetherness arises because we're alone, and the aloneness hurts. We want to drown our aloneness in relationship. That's why we become so much involved in love. Ordinarily, you think you fall in love with someone because they're beautiful, which actually it says isn't true. The truth is the opposite. You fall in love because you cannot be alone. You are going to fall. You are going to avoid yourself somehow or other. But there are people who don't fall in love with someone, they fall in love with money or power trip. They become politicians. This too is avoiding aloneness. If you watch yourself deeply, you will be surprised how all your activities can be reduced to one single source. The source is that you're afraid of your aloneness. Everything else is just an excuse. The real cause is that you find yourself very alone. The great evangelist Dwight Moody once said that, he said, if I could just get someone to still their mind for 5 minutes, I will always bring them back to God. Because he had an extraordinary success in winning people to Christ and actually seeing many have their lives changed. And when he was asked about his secrets, it was very simple. That was his first thing. And the second thing was, he said, I always get people away from their friends and on their own with me, because I know once they're on their own, I can get them to that still place. And he said they'll realize that all their activities and mental fears is just running away from God and running away from the source. So it's a beautiful little reflection for us to ponder today, and very telling right now to go back to their inward path and go back to their inward journey. When you actually think about it, and in fact, when we go a little bit deeper, and there's a scripture actually in Isaiah chapter 5, which is the one that was given to me for planet Earth this week. And one of the things to realize is that Psalm 23 says that he will lead us through the valley of the shadow of death and we will fear no evil. And we all know that one very well. But he says, although I walk in the land of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And remembering that the Bible, all these places, although metaphoric, are very real in the astral or spiritual realm. So where is the land of the shadow of death? The truth is we're in it right now. We're in, and in the deeper teachings of the mystery schools, which I've been learning more and more, they basically, even in Freemasonry, it's taught, for example, that we're fallen gods who've descended into a low form of matter. And the purpose of being on earth is to transcend duality and to return back to our true soul. Now, they basically leave Christ out of it, which is why they end up moving more into soul power. But the basic premise and secret of what they teach is how they've managed to get so much power, because they realize that truth. But ultimately, we are just in a lower form of matter. We're in a lower, what's called realm of the land of the shadow of death, a land where Satan has ruled in this realm of the shadow of death. And ultimately is to move outside of that and go inward and move back to source and move back to God and back to our true soul. So that's what we're here to do, to return back to our heart, to our spirit, to our true soul, or our Christ, basically born again, released soul, so to speak. For those who were there last night, you may remember I was teaching that Jesus said that you must be born again to enter the kingdom of heaven. And we've seen all kinds of churches and groups turn this into religions and cults, whereas really it's quite simple. In virtually every mystery school and ancient belief system, the idea of a rebirth was considered essential to enter into the higher kingdom and some form of a rebirth. And so born again means what it says. It means a spiritual rebirth. You move beyond your animal body or your lower natured body, and you move into a higher body and have your spirit quickened and become a new man or new woman. So in this one here, it says, they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea, and if one looks into the land, darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens. What's important to understand is that planet Earth has descended into great darkness already. You may not see it in the outward fully as yet, but it has already happened, and it will play out in the coming days more and more. So these are the messages I've been getting. And when you read the book of Job, it talks very much about descending into this into matter, or this land of the shadow of death. So we're moving into times where darkness will prevail and have a time of reigning upon the earth, like a spiritual ice age. And I've been saying this for a while, but it's important now to get practical what this means. As it's one thing to prophesy it as coming, and one thing to realize you're actually in it now, and it's already in the beginnings. And the truth is we are in the beginnings of it right now. So it's a great time to go inward and go deeper and actually move into a much deeper place, because there's much light for those who go inward at this time. So let me just go. The other one which I did, which I've been doing lately, as you know, is doing these rune stones. These are wonderful things used in ancient readings. What's very important to understand is even in the scriptures in the Old Testament, King David used to use this thing called the Urim and the Thummim, the Old Testament priests, and it was all basically to do with casting of lots, which, by the way, is very different to what's called divination, where you're moving into lower, what's called astrology, or lower level kind of fortune telling or tarots, where you're using it as a form of fortune telling, as compared to actually connecting to Christ, connecting to source, and getting what's called deep inner guidance. So the rune stone here, which is very interesting, it's the rune stone of what's called fertility. So what it basically says, this is a completion of beginnings. And the good thing about this one, it's a joyful deliverance of new life and new path to allow a new beginning. So completion is crucial at this time. So this is what this is saying here. So this kind of follows on from the dream one that we've got, that don't look upon some illusion or some dream in the outward, that some business project that you're doing, some career that you're pursuing, some relationship you're in or that you're about to enter into, some some church that you've joined, some whatever that you've joined, or some kind of, you know, belief of something that's going to happen is going to make everything come good. It's actually saying that the only path to find true fulfillment is really going back to within yourself, going back to God or back to source. And very important, it's saying here to complete what you started. In other words, to get practical, new beginnings, step into what you hear or what you're meant to be doing here. So it's saying here, these are the words that jumped out, especially today here, about clearing away the old. These words here, you may be required to free yourself from a rut, habit, or pattern or relationship, from some deep cultural or behavioral pattern, some activity that was proper to the self you're leaving behind. The time of birth is a critical one. Movement that is timely leaves out of danger. The time has come to enter the delivery room. In other words, we've been preparing for the Olympic Games or the Hunger Games, and guess what? Now we're entering into them. Now you're coming out of hibernation and you're stepping up, and the time has come for the real world and the real action, and everything that you've been putting into place in your life over the years to start to come to pass, into fruition, and start to live the path and the reason that you are here. This is the direct message that I'm getting right now. This is very much that time. Whatever it is you know you're here to do, whatever it is that you can feel you're being led into, and it can be so small, it can be seemingly insignificant, but it's important that you do what you're here to do. Sometimes we can think it's some big, great, amazing thing, whereas really, this is more just about letting go of an old patterning, an old way of being, and moving into a new way of being, a completely new way of existence and a new way of living. In my case, to give you an example, being completely transparent, my rut, habit, or relationship or cultural pattern has been, in a way, I've been a dreamer for a lot of my life, always had big dreams. And some of them I've seen happen, a lot of them I haven't, and it's still happening. The biggest thing I've realized is just as important as dreaming, and Brooke will find this amusing, or being a hare, or being a runner, so to speak, is sometimes being a tortoise and doing things consistently and gradually, and just basically doing something because it's the right thing to do, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like you want to be doing it right now, is something to be done. That's been my pattern. I've been someone who all my life, I don't really like doing things that I don't want to do. That's been my biggest challenge. And I've been actually coming to grips or coming to accept the fact that part of being a spiritual teacher and being a leader is sometimes it's being consistent and doing things and doing the small things which seem boring and seem uninteresting, but are important to maintain momentum and consistency, and that will open the door for the next stage where it is more exciting. A little bit like preparing to run in a Olympic Games or a competition. You won't even get to run in it unless you do the preparation. So this is the message I've been getting right now. And this was the message I got today for the group. So before I start, does that resonate with anyone? Just out of interest. If it does, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But yeah, it's really a time to let go of old patterning. Yeah, Christine, for me to Alex, where I'm at right now, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So this is, so in a summary of what I just got there, this is not the time to be focusing on 3D illusions or looking at outward things. It's doing the little things that matter in your life right now, focusing on what's important, on the inward thing, and realizing that the real action is beginning now. And it's more about what you're doing in the small things now for the bigger picture ahead. So on that note, let's go into the parables. And so far what we've covered. The biggest thing with the parables, you may remember, is that they're really here to teach the deeper teachings of Christ in the mystery schools. But as Christ said, they were encoded to make sure only the people that Jesus wanted to understand them understood them. So the disciples said to him, "Why are you speaking to us in parables?" And because he is very clear that it's given to his disciples, but not to others. So this is something that I will also add, speaking very honestly with everyone, is actually being given to me. And I've been told very clearly that some of your deeper teachings, Warren, that you've been given, you've paid a big price for, you and Grace. And you've got to be very selective who you share these with moving forward. And I actually had a message over the last few days about this. And people who are going to share the deeper teachings need to invest significantly, just like you have done. So I was told, yes, there's some stuff that you do for free to serve the planet and give out to let people get that. But some of the deeper stuff that you give them, people have got to not only invest in, but they've got to invest well, because you've invested well. You sacrificed everything for the work, and Christ sacrificed everything for his work. So for the deeper teachings of the kingdom of heaven, these disciples were called upon to give up everything for the higher work. And you will see that coming today. You will see that in the parable of the Dragnet. You would have noticed that even in the last two teachings I've given on the pearl of great price and the treasure in the field, that this work is a call to give up everything. And right now on this planet, people will come to that choice one way or the other, whether they like it or not. And this is why we are seeing the planet fast move towards this time of the mark of the beast, this time where people are going to move into a tribulation period, where people will basically have a choice to either be microchipped or have a choice to basically not be microchipped. And to avoid that choice and not have, the ideal is not to even be in a duality where you have that choice, because you've already moved beyond that choice and you've moved into a higher way of being where you're outside of all that. That's the ideal state of being. But if not, you certainly don't want to be taking it. So it's very important to realize right now that people will, one way or the other, either have to move into this higher level beyond this place of choice and give up everything for the higher kingdom and the inward path, or if they're not willing, or people are not willing to do this, well, yeah, they'll come to a place where they'll be forced to choose at a much greater cost. So right now, in fact, this is the time to really make the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven your main priority and the main things you search for in life. Because the truth is, nothing else matters. I can remember when I had my encounter 2 years ago that many of you know about, and the one thing I remember and comes back to me, and when I do, I just go deep into my heart, I go very soft and start to cry. And that was the words that I spoke to the councils of 9 when they came to me. I just kept saying, nothing else matters. I know it doesn't. I don't care about anything else. I said, I don't care about my business. I said, I don't care about any of that shit. I said, I just want to do the work of the kingdom of heaven. I just desire to do the higher work of Christ and build this center. That's all I want to do. I said, nothing else matters. But just secondary stuff, which is important, practical stuff for day to day. But this is all that matters to me. And every now and again, when I start to get caught up again in daily things and in mundane stuff and I'm not enjoying, I remember that. And it's the fastest way for me to get back to my heart and get back to my path. Even now, as I speak about it, I feel my heart softening straight away. And I feel myself already starting to open up again on another level. So this is what Christ says to us. The kingdom of heaven. Who else here is finding that just out of interest in the last few months with all that's happening, but you're noticing that the things of the world around you, your business, your friends, your family, your partner, have almost become more meaningless in comparison to this kind of work? Who's been noticing that? Lexi, yeah. I know you have been. I've been feeling what's happening with you. You've really been taken into a very deep inward place. Fiona, yes, to a point, yeah. And that's why you're a lot more at peace, Lexi, and you're a lot more in your heart than you have been before. Christine, yes, for me, there's nothing more important. Nico, yeah, going through a lot, dealing with it well though. Yeah, look, but you do go through a lot because there's so many layers in this matter which we have to release and unfold of this old, what's called sackcloth garment that we're wearing, or what the Bible talks over and over again calls our flesh or our sackcloth garment. So you can see this here. One of the reasons too why Christ speaks in parables is because people's hearts are hard and heavy and they're not listening. So that's the other reason too why it's very limited who this is given to. What's interesting is that Jesus never spoke his deeper teachings except in parables. And it's important to realize that. So, for example, if you actually go deeper into the mysteries, when Jesus dealt with the masses, he did many miracles. Why? Because he knew that miracles and outward manifestations of material abundance, miracles of business, miracles of an amazing healing, miracles of suddenly food appearing to them, he knew that was a way to reach and get the attention of the masses who were completely caught up in things of 3D. But what's interesting, you'll notice with his disciples, he did less of that stuff. He was far more interested in teaching them to less be focused on the miracles and more focused on the inward, and really, really focused on the inner stuff and what was important. So these are the parables we've covered to date. The sower, the wheat and the tares, the mustard seed, the advancement principle, the hidden woman in the basket, and in the last 2 weeks, the parable of the treasure, the parable of the pearl of great price. So both these last two especially have been alluding to the sacrifice that's required and the fact that it will cost you everything. And that was what we shared about last week, but to really experience the fullness of the kingdom of heaven, it will cost you everything. And that's why Jesus said the path is narrow and very few will find it. And he meant what he was saying. The truth is the vast majority of people will not be able to ascend because they're not willing to pay the price. And that's why it's so important for all of us to realize and ask that of ourselves, whether we're willing to pay the price. And that was what we shared last week. How the merchant man who sought many things, and he sought goodly pearls. In other words, his search was for wealth, earthly wealth. But when he found one pearl, he gave up everything else that he had to take that one thing. And I mentioned how there were 6 component parts. And we went through the fact that the merchant man, this was very much speaking to businessmen, I mentioned, businesswomen, people in business. So people who are very often successful in business, people who are doing well in business. And so this parable, unlike the treasure in the field, was a little bit more like somebody actually searching for wealth to increase their wealth, but then realizing it was all illusory. And this was the eye of the needle one. And seeking goodly pearls, and when he found one beautiful pearl of great price, in other words, it would cost him everything that he owned, he gave up everything that he had so he could go and purchase that pearl. And that was what Jesus said is what the kingdom of heaven is about, being willing to give up everything for the higher work. So let's continue our series now with the parable of the dragnet. So I know Grace has spoken a bit about that, and now let's actually read what it says. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered fish of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the end of the world, or the end of the age is probably a better way of putting it. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So it's pretty sobering, isn't it? It's a pretty interesting parable, and there's so much richness to this. You could almost do 3 webinars on this and still be going, because there's so much in this particular one. In fact, there's 8 component parts that I could come up with, and technically there could have been more, because I stopped at verse 48. So let's have a look at the dragnet first, and what we mean by the dragnet. So the dragnet, something used to catch fish. So nets require a boat or vessel. Now, why did Jesus use this dragnet example? If you read what I've written in 3, his 3 closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, were all commercial fishermen before they became disciples of Jesus. Who didn't know that out of interest? That all 3 of them were commercial fishermen for occupation. Anyone here who didn't know that one? Looks like you all did. But basically, they were commercial fishermen. So in other words, they all were worked in business. So basically, they were businessmen. Not necessarily rich people who worked in banks or anything like that, but they were normal people, but they ran businesses. They were out catching fish. So to understand this dragnet, as I've taught previously, you've always got to have a look at what other scriptures are saying to get an idea. And there's a lot in the Bible and in spiritual teaching about fishing. So let's just go and have a look. So we'll look first at Luke chapter, at Matthew 4, and then we'll look at Luke 5. So basically, once Jesus began his ministry, this is what he says here. So verse 18 to 22. So he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So isn't it interesting? But he basically walked up to his guys, and he says to them, people who are doing a normal business. So imagine this, okay? Imagine Fiona and Darren are running their business, or let's just say that Alex is running his knife sharpening, or any of you are really just living your normal life doing it. And then you suddenly meet Jesus, or someone who you know is moving in a higher authority. And he walked up to them and he said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." In other words, the next verse tells you what he was saying to them. They left their nets straight away and followed him. In other words, walk away from what you're doing and do my path and what I'm asking you to do. What happened to me 2 years ago when the Council of 9 turned up and just said, "Walk away and follow me"? It's big, isn't it? This morning, as I went for a long walk, I was really asking myself the question that came to me in my morning meditational walk. What was the greatest trip I've ever been on? What was my favorite trip I've done? Because I thought this will tell me a lot about who I am. And I knew the answer instantly. It was in August 2014 when I went to America and I went to a workshop with Raymond Grace and healed myself by the end of the 3rd day. And then I went into Sedona and walked the mountains, and I pretty much didn't plan the trip anymore. I rented the cheapest motel in the center of town that I could find, because I deliberately wanted somewhere that was very, very average and very, very plain. So I got this very plain motel, and I just started walking in the mountains, swimming in the lake in Sedona in the hot. And this is where so much was spoken to me. I got so much clarity upon my life. I realized I hated being a lawyer with a passion, which I was at the time, an attorney. I hated it with an absolute passion. And I've been feeling it for a few years and resisting it out of fear. And suddenly I just remember, as I walked on a high mountain and was climbing up the mountain, I just suddenly said, "I'm walking away." And I felt this encounter with God, and my whole heart started to open up. I started to smile, and I said, "I'm walking away. That's it, it's over." And everything in my logic, which previously had stopped me, went out the window. I'm like, yeah, I know that means I'm giving up a profitable business, a very, very lucrative business. And I know I've got no idea where I'm going to go next, but I'm just going to do it. And I can remember just celebrating on the mountain. And I just renounced it that day. And I said, that's it. I'm going to my next stage wherever I get taken. And that's all I said to God. I surrender. Wherever I'm going next, I don't know, but fuck, I'm looking forward to this. And I came back and many people thought I'd gone a bit mad. I did for a brief moment, but I did it. And there's something about walking away from your nets and following Christ and giving up everything. What was interesting for me when I did that, I was willing to walk away and do and have no idea what would happen next. As it turned out, the message I was given months later was to continue with tax planning and financial work with clients, but no longer as a lawyer, to do it in a different way. So I just ended up changing it that way. I used to give up a lot of my clients because the law didn't allow me to take them anymore because they'd been legal work, but I effectively made a transitionary move. But the point was, in my heart, I let go of everything and just asked, where do I go next? So the first lesson of this Dragnet parable really is very much similar to this pearl of great price and everything else, is actually being willing to walk away and give up everything. And you can see the same thing here. James and John, he saw them also, but they were mending their nets. So whereas Peter and Andrew were out trying to catch the fish, these guys were out trying to mend the nets to make them possible to catch the fish. So even these people who are, so in a way, these guys were like the marketers, the evangelists, these were like the marketers, the salespeople of the business, Peter and Andrew. James and John were like the systems builders, the managers of the business. They were the ones who managed the systems, managed the business, made sure the clients got good customer care, all that kind of stuff, made sure that when they caught the fish, they didn't have holes in the net so they all fell out. So a very big lesson of this Dragnet parable straight away is the importance of the balance there in business, the imbalance in life. So there's the going out, there's bringing in the fish, but then there's mending the nets to make sure the fish stay there. But notice that both of these two walked away from their businesses. They walked away, and in James and John's case, and from their father. So basically, just imagine this scenario. James and John are in a Jewish Hebrew culture where family was really big. A bit like maybe India today, where family's big, or Philippines. So for those of you like Grace who would understand Philippine culture, or basically people who have any kind of knowing people of India, imagine going up to your parents, but you're running a business with, but you're really immersed to them and just walking up and saying, I'm leaving the business now, you're going to have to work it out without me, and just walking off. Now, I'm sure Fiona's mind is boggling. It'd be like you walking up to Darren, Fiona, and saying, you're going to have to trust me, sweetheart. I'm leaving the business. You're going to have to work it out without me. When? Now. Like as in right now? Yeah, like as in right now, Daz. See you, mate. Fiona's probably got her mind blowing a little bit. Yeah, whoa. But that's giving you an example of really what actually happened here. This was a level of conviction that these ones listened. Fiona, is that you thinking I want to do that? Well, that's what they did. It's what I did with my law firm. I just said, you know what? I'm walking away. I have no fucking idea how I'm going to go make money. I have no idea how I'm going to make this work. I'm scared out of my wits, and I was scared. So just because I had this great dream and stepped out didn't mean I wasn't scared. It didn't mean I wasn't absolutely shitting in my pants, leaving a smell. And as you know, I've got a horrible sense of humor, so every now and again it has to come out. But literally, I was absolutely packing myself. And no doubt any of you who've done the same thing would know. You're packing yourself with the fear of obligation. What will they think of me? What will my parents think of me? What will my mum and dad think of me? I remember that was going through my mind. What will my business mentors think of me? What will, goodness me, what will What will Grace and the kids think of me? Shit. You know, I have no idea how I'm going to be doing anything that I'm doing anymore. But I just did it. This pattern is all throughout Scripture, by the way. Elisha, the prophet, when Elijah turned up to him and said to him, I'm calling you, Elijah. You're going to be my successor. He didn't say to him, can you wait 6 months and then I'll do it. All he said was, let me just quickly kiss my father goodbye and I'm coming. And he goes, okay. And he kissed his father goodbye and then he walked up and burnt all of his oxen. In other words, he shut his business down and followed him. By contrast, there's another story in Scripture about a couple of guys who, when Jesus came to them, said, look, Jesus. First guy said, I'd love to go with you, but I've got to go bury my father first. You know, I've got family responsibilities, my friend. I'm sure you understand that, Jesus. I'm sure you know that it's custom for the eldest son to bury their father. My father's dying. I'm going to need a few months before I can do the call. And what did Jesus say? He just said, let the dead bury their own dead and come and follow me. Now, I know Grace, that always blows her mind, that one. We talk about this one a lot. Let the dead bury their own dead. It's one of the things I love about Grace, by the way. It's why I like working with her, because she's radical like this. I know even when we've had family funerals, she'd just say, well, let the dead bury their own dead. She'd just say that to me. You could see she was like, whatever. And I would laugh. I think, I love that. Because it would remind me every now and again when I have those brief tinges of human kind of responsibility and feeling obliged. But Jesus said, let the dead, in other words, let those who are caught up with the affairs of the dead matter of this earth and who that's a priority for them do that job. Because they're not part of the kingdom of heaven anyway. They're in this earth. But you, if you say the kingdom of heaven is your priority, you come and follow me. Now, if that isn't giving some of you a little bit of a shock, I don't know what else will. Or at least a bit of a wow. Because that's what he said. Another one came up and said, I will give up everything for you, Lord, and I'll follow you. And he goes, will you now? Foxes have got dens, birds have nests, but mate, I don't even have a home to live in. That's what he said. I don't have all those material attachments that these ones have got. Are you sure you want to do this? It's a pretty big thing, isn't it? Whereas these ones here, who felt called to the higher work, they were called, they dropped everything, and they went immediately. Now, those of you who've done business and had anything to do with sales will know what I mean when I say this. If someone says to you, look, I'm not going to buy your product today, I've got a few things to sort out, but in the next 6 months, I'll contact you again. What does that normally mean? Is that a yes or a no? Do you take their commitment seriously, or do you know that 95% likely you'll never hear from them again? Yeah, Alex, correct. We have learnt that in business. Those of you who know business would know exactly what I mean. I had this happen to me about 5 days ago. A client who told me that they were going to sign up in July, in May, and I thought, yep, let's just see what happens. I highly doubt it. July, I wrote to him and said, so what's happening? Sure enough, look, yeah, I've got to sort out my trading system. In the next 3 months, you'll be hearing from me for sure. And this time round, I just wrote to him and said, no, you won't. I said, you've got till Tuesday to sign up at this price. Otherwise, I will no longer be agreeing to work with you. That's what I said to him. And that's what I say to clients now. Because I've worked out if someone doesn't sign up pretty much straight away or without a very good reason, they're not going to. And even if they do, they're going to be problematic. That's what I've learned. Except in very rare circumstances where, like I have had clients say to me in business, like, Warren, I need 3 days to go and do this. How about we talk next week at this time? That's different. And this is what happened with Elijah. He just said to him, look, let me just go and do this one thing first, then I will move. And he knew his heart. He knew he was serious. He just knew he had to do this one thing and sort it out. So likewise here, if you know and if you desire to really live the kingdom of heaven and live your heart's dream and really live your life purpose, it will cost you. It does require instant action, and it does require you to give up everything, especially the opinions, attachments, and the obligations of other people. You can see this all through Scripture. Jesus was very clear. By the way, the ones of you who got a huge advantage, if any of you have had really shitty upbringings with really horrible, shitty parents, you had an advantage to the rest of us because you kind of are forced to break your attachments early on. So my guess is any of you who've been through highly abusive upbringings have probably found that relatively easy to move on from your families and move on from your upbringing and culture. That is why Jesus said that it's the poor in spirit who inherit the kingdom of heaven. So for you, you're at a bit of an advantage compared to everyone else. So Lexi, yeah, wow. So those of you who've had shitty upbringings generally have had a big advantage. Those of you who've had very healthy, prosperous upbringings are at a disadvantage because you will naturally wish to attach and hold on to what you've got because that's what you were taught. You were given security in the 3D at a young age. So if you're thinking to yourself, this is all in reverse, the answer is, yeah, the kingdom of heaven is in reverse. Jesus was very clear. Everything works in reverse. So I said this to Grace, you were fortunate, I said, because you never went to university. Everyone thought you were a dummy. You never really got much education. So you had to work things out on the street and everyone thought you were stupid. Now, the funny thing was, if you said this to Grace 25 years ago, Grace had a horrible low self-worth around that. And she used to feel like very competitive and low self-worth around me. And this was one of the problems that we had because I went to uni and she felt everyone took me seriously, not hers. I think now if you ask Grace, she sees she has a major advantage over me. Because for me, I've had to spend all these years undoing my university education. And because I was given a university, so basically I was taught to be a slave. I was taught to be the bitch of other people. That's what uni teaches you. If you actually look at what billionaires and the wealthy do, most of them have a couple of things in common. Number one, they've normally had very abusive upbringings and many of them were orphans and lived in the streets in Harlem in some shitty place. Number two, because of that, they're instant action takers. You'll never meet a billionaire who will say, yeah, look, give me some time and I'll let you know. They either say yes or no very quickly. Andrew Carnegie, when he was talking with Napoleon Hill on the book Think and Grow Rich, he actually said to him, he made him the offer, but he said, I will introduce you to all the richest people in the whole world to write for them. You're not going to be paid for it. But he said, you'll get to meet the richest people in the whole world. I want to write a book on the secrets of getting rich. But he said, you got 60 seconds to decide. And he looked at his watch and started to time him. And later on, he told Napoleon Hill, if it took you more than 60 seconds to decide, he said, I wouldn't have wanted to work with you because it showed me you were too indecisive and didn't have what it takes. So by the way, this is what the very successful people do as well in the 3D, in the business realm of Earth. So Jesus put this same expectation on his disciples. Jesus had no interest in working with people who were caught up in the 3D, no interest in procrastinators, in indecisive people, people who were caught up with family obligation. You will see that with the story of Martha and Mary. He was very, very clear with Martha and Mary that when you think about it, again, this was all in reverse. Because if you meet someone who's very 3D focused, and I remember my mum always had a problem with the story of Martha and Mary. Because basically what happened in the story of Martha and Mary was that Martha was this really good lady or whatever else who was just absolutely a hard worker. So when Jesus turned up, she was the one going, oh, we've got to make sure Jesus gets some good food. Yep, we've got to make sure he gets this. We've got to make sure he gets this. We can't have dirt in the house. We can't have a messy room here. So she was running around doing all this. Meanwhile, Mary is sitting there cross-legged, dressed in a very feminine dress, listening to Jesus speak, listening to every word he's saying and not even speaking, daring not to interrupt him so she could hear his wisdom. Martha's watching this in absolute first astonishment, then horror, and then anger builds into her heart and indignation. She's like, what the heck? My sister's sitting there. I'm working my ass off here to feed Jesus and make sure he's looked after. And she's just sitting at his feet, just kind of chilling out and listening to his wisdom. Hey, there's a time and a place. I mean, she could go to synagogue, to church. She could, you know, but goodness sake, I mean, she's got no sense of family responsibility. She's a selfish little git. I'm sure that's what Martha was thinking. She's just a selfish little git. For goodness sake, my sister's always been like that. So finally she thought, okay, I've had enough of this. So she says, look, Jesus, please, can you bloomin' well chat to my sister and tell her to get on and help me in the kitchen? Please, get this woman to help me in the kitchen. Get her to help me out. I mean, I'm doing all the work here. This isn't fair, Jesus. Surely you can see that it's not fair. Now, no doubt many of you, if any of you have got that tendency, you probably would have been feeling the same thing at some stage. I know my mum used to always say it was a bit rough on Mary, on Martha, what Jesus said. But all Jesus said was he looked very, very compassionately at Martha. And he said, Martha, Martha, Martha. He didn't get mad at her. He didn't condemn her. He just said, Martha, you care for so many things. You're caught up with so many things in your mind. But Mary has chosen what is the wisest thing, and it will not be taken from her. I'm not going to put your shit on her. That's your paradigm, Martha. That's your shit. You're not putting this on Mary. No doubt it moved Martha profoundly, because Martha, in subsequent scriptures, you'll find changed. She changed a lot in subsequent scriptures. She actually became a very different lady. She learnt the value of Jesus's lesson. My question is, do you? Who of you today still live your life where you would be the one that would hesitate? If Jesus came and you had your dragnet casting out nets into the sea to catch your business, to bring in your clients, to bring in your money, to do your work, to do whatever it is you're doing in the world right now. And if he said to you, follow me, for I'm going to take you and make you fishers of men and take you to the next level, would you be the one that straight away left your nets and followed him? Would you be the one that left the ship and left your father and mother behind? Or would you be the one in the other scriptures arguing with him, but you had to first go and bury your father? You had to make sure you did your family responsibility. Would you be the one going right back to another parable where Jesus actually said that the man actually said, first, let me go and attend to my business and my real estate, which I've just purchased. Then I will come and follow you. That was another parable. He said, I've got to go and attend to that. Look, you've got to understand, Jesus. I've got a business. I've just bought some land. I've got some farming land to attend to, some property land, some real estate. I've got a business to attend to. And by the way, these aren't bad things. Quite the contrary, many of the greatest people in the Bible, and not everyone was called to leave that all and go and do that. Because without farms and without that kind of stuff happening, and without real estate, without people doing this kind of stuff, economies don't function. But the question always is, what is your priority? And if you were asked today, what would you do? And in fact, for some of you, you're already being called. Some of you already know it. Some of you already know that you're being called today to drop everything and make some new big decision. And that was why we got that cart that came out in the ruin stone. Some of you know that is your path. It could be to walk away from a relationship that you're in, which you know isn't serving you, and move into something new. It could be to step out of a business that you actually hate, but you feel you've got to keep doing it for family responsibility, to not let down someone. It could be that you're stuck in a situation with people or with your family where you feel obliged to do certain things for them, but it's not your highest value. The question is, are you willing to leave your dragnet and leave your ship in the physical and follow Christ today, whatever that means for you? It's sobering, isn't it? Alex, I would have been in the past apologizing for catching the wrong fish and try harder. Yep. See, this is one of the things I've admired about my son, Edward, for example. Edward, if you met Edward 2 years ago, he absolutely would beat himself up for mistakes. He found it very hard not to listen to obligation. And I remember when he changed radically in the business and became very different. And I said to him, what happened, Edward? He said, well, I decided, Dad, but I was trying too hard and that mistakes were okay and it was part of learning. I made a decision that day, but never again will I beat myself up for mistakes. And I nodded my head and said, wow, the secrets of the kingdom of heaven really belong to the kids. We adults know jack shit. That's why one of my favorite classes for the week, and some of you know this, is my Thursday class called the Youth Investment, where I have teenagers in that class. And I teach them about investment and life and business. And they just get it really easily. And they just simplify everything. They don't complicate things at all. It forces me to keep my messages really simple. So here's my question for you. Just type in the chat. Who here knows that right now you're being called to make some fundamental step of some kind? Who knows that? And it could be anything, but a fundamental step. I'm going to be the first one to say, put my hand up and say, me. I know I'm being called to let go of certain things, because for me, it's very hard to let go of my business and systems and trust other people. And by and large, I've done pretty well, but I was really pulled up this week because I realized that it's time to let go completely. Hand over everything that's not my highest value. I got this the last 2 days. So Grace is going to have to unfortunately get ready for her and Isaac to get hit with some videos. But I was given this message. Lexi, yes. Christine, yes. Steve, yes. Alex, yes. Amita, Sheldon. Yep, I got the message of quite a lot of you today are getting this message. The truth is, it's very important to understand that we are all energy beings. When you continue to do that thing that you think you have to do because you let other people down, those other people, you're actually preventing their growth because energetically they can pick up where you're at. John DeMartini in his business mastery training actually says, but staff who are in your business who don't actually want to be there are an energetic weight upon your business. People in a church or spiritual work who really don't want to be there or are against what you're doing, they're an energetic weight. That is why I'm really happy with the City Awakening that we've got 15 people today that by and large want to be here and who've been committed people. I'd rather have 15 people who are serious about this work than have 1,500 people where most people are caught up in shit. And in fact, I was saying to Grace last night, I can really understand now why Enoch, for example, he, as years went on, he withdrew more from humanity, why Sri Ketswai did the same, why Babaji did the same. Because I said, I'm just realizing it, like last night when I was running my Knights of the Holy Cross, I was like, goodness me, you know, I can feel the energy of people here. I could feel people who are out of whack. I can see things. Gosh, you know, I really just am keen to just speak to those who are hungry, really hungry to change, because the hungry can shift really quickly. Those who are not hungry, I started to question and say, do I really want to be working with these people? So this has been my own little challenge I've been going through. So the question is, really right now, I sense to do this, just to write down. So whatever it is you know you're to do, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes just to write it down. And write down whatever commitment it is for yourself that you know you're being called to do, so you can actually see that you've made that commitment. So actually write it out in your own words. So whatever it is you feel called to do. Doesn't need to be long, only a couple of lines. For me, like I said, it's very simple. To let go of anything to do with business systems, other, and only focus on the creative side of the business. That's it. That's for me what my one is. Anything outside of that one, that's my anchor, and that's my rule, my boundary. So as soon as it crosses into the systems, all I can do is give feedback to the team. It's not my job to do anything other than give feedback if I see anything. Miko, mentor youth, great. So you've got to get specific on that one, Miko, for yourself. You can put it in the text chat if you want, or you can write it for yourself. It doesn't actually, I'm actually okay with either. But something specific, like for me, that was my specific. So I want to apply that to each thing I'm involved with. So with WealthSafe, for example, that was the one business I found it very hard to let go of certain things. And the last few days, I've let go of a whole heap of things in that. So even today and tomorrow, I'm going to be going through and just checking everything, and anything which remotely falls outside that room of being creative, I am going to hand over to the relevant team members. Grace is very happy. She's pregnant. Lexi, let go of expectations of other people and hold myself more accountable. Well, if you could actually live that, Lexi, that would be brilliant, because that's actually real maturity, is to realize that everything outside of you is out of your control. But you can control your perception of them and the way you see them. And realize the expectation that you're putting on others is only really the expectation you're putting upon yourself, but you're not owning. That's all it is. There was a lady called Yvonne Christensen who years ago, she wrote a book that I read. She was a pastor in an American church. And the book was called, Lord, Don't Change Them, Change Me. And that book really was a profound difference for me, because she made a commitment to herself that for the next, I think it was year, that whenever she had an incident with someone that she didn't like, she would take it back to herself no matter what. So whenever she didn't like something about another person, she would just simply focus on her reaction to that person. And her life absolutely transformed in that next year. Transformed. So yeah, that's a good one, Lexi. And then what you got to do is break that down to where you're doing that. Think of situations right now where you have an expectation of someone else. Yeah, I feel you're shifting a lot, Lexi. Well, you're hungry right now. I can feel there's a hunger in you. You're really hungry. And you're showing that with your actions. So the key for you is to just, like you said, keep being hungry. I like what you said there, being very accountable of yourself. It's a really good thing to do. Blame no one for anything. And when you start to do that, it changes your life. You'll find you'll even do it with government leaders. When you see leaders you don't like, or things about them you don't like, you'll own it in yourself. You'll actually see that leader and the way they're behaving is got as much to do with your projection of them as it has to do with what they're doing. Anyone else, and like I said, obviously, if you don't want to share, is there anyone else who's had any profound realization which they want to briefly share in here? You can either quickly take the mic for 20, 30 seconds, or you can type it in the chat. I don't mind. For me to time the shift and take my training more seriously and practice daily. Yep, that's good. So you might set yourself a daily practice for meter, like a daily 1 hour meditation or 30 minutes, whatever it is. Brooke, that's a really good one, Brooke. To live in serenity and not stress about things outside my control. That's actually really nice, because I know for you especially, that's a really big shift. But yeah, look, when you can almost create a dividing line, and this is what I've done. So when anything is stressing you, you always ask, is this thing within my control? And if it's not, then you change your reaction. So as an example, if I'm leading an aspect of the business and stressing me, well, it is in my control because I have authority to do something about it. So if I don't like something that's going on in our business at WealthSafe, which I'm an owner in, although I'm not director, I do have some control because as a shareholder, I can take action with that company. I can go to the fellow shareholders, Grace and Vina, and I can share what I'm not happy about, and I can exercise my power. And if I don't like a particular staff member, what they're doing, I can say I want this dealt with. But let's just say that I don't like what's going on in Christine's business, for example. Let's say Christine was running a business. Well, my action with that is I can share my perspective with her, but then it's up to me whether I'm engaged in that aspect of her business. And then also it can come down to me shifting my perspective. Like I don't agree, for example, with Mark McGowan, our state's Premier's stance on vaccinations. But in saying that, I can choose to do one or two things. I can choose to get really focused like people on Facebook and write a big thing. And so work it out that before I know it, I hate Mark McGowan and I'm going around saying he's a dictator and a fascist and all that, like I'm seeing people do. Well, I can say, well, overall, I like what he's doing. I can see that, I can see where he's at and what he's doing. And I just see him as doing what he believes is the right thing for the state. And my main thing is, well, yeah, I'm just choosing in my own path to focus on my own immune system and my own life in a certain way. And what he chooses to do and what people choose to do is up to them. And everyone's got a choice in how they can, in what they can choose. Now, if someone tries to impinge upon my choice, well, I'll deal with it then. That's where I'm at. Okay, so like I said, it's gone in a much slower direction. Who's enjoyed so far today? Just sort of slightly more focused and just very much sticking to this whole dragnet around this. Sheldon, yep. Thank you. Brooke as well, thank you. Famita, Lexi. Yeah, Christine likes when I go slower. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I've been learning, being more in my heart. So it's very, very, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Fiona. It's actually great when you go to Luke 5, because Luke 5 continues this whole idea of the dragnet. Because as people pressed to learn, to hear the word of God, he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and he saw two ships. So what this is doing is taking Matthew 4, which as you can see is a summary, whereas Luke spends a lot more time elaborating on the story. So Jesus told Simon Peter, launch into the deep and let down your nets for a catch of fish. Now, this is really important because this is what Peter said to him. Now, what's interesting is notice that the first thing that Jesus did to reach Simon Peter was he worked a miracle in his business, because this is a fisherman who runs a business. So if Jesus had walked up to Peter and said, mate, follow me now, he would have gone, yeah, okay, mate, thanks, whatever. But all he said to him was, Master, we have worked our asses off all night. We haven't caught a single fish. Or my business, we have worked, we have set up a marketing funnel, we have been going out, we've been running events and workshops. In all honesty, we're not making any money right now. And you're telling us to go and do another event? Okay, because it's your word, I will put down the net and I will go and do this. I will trust you because I can see there's something about you that's different. And it says, once they did it, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and the net broke. Now, look at this. They've then called their partners, which happen to be James and John, by the way, in the other ship, to come and help them. And they filled the ship so that they began to sink. So in other words, they had so much money pouring in their business, they said to their another business that they work closely with in JV, hey guys, we're inundated. We can't handle this business. It's gone berserk. Can you come and help us? Then they came and helped them, but they couldn't handle it either. And when Peter saw it, this is what he said. He said, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. Because he was astonished at what had just happened. In other words, this couldn't have happened. No doubt Simon Peter had fished in that area for years. He knew pretty much where all the fish were. He knew which were the good fishing spots. He knew which were the quiet fishing spots. He knew which parts, but sometimes you had good days, sometimes you had bad days. He was like an options trader who knew that some days you go well, many times in the market, it goes sideways, you're just not making money. Then you have brief periods where it comes in. And then just like that, you get a miracle. I can remember years ago, I was running a church, and Grace would remember this, with Grace Together, called the Fruitful Vine. And there was a particular man in our church called David. And the Holy Spirit gave me a word for him, a very clear word. Because he joined our church, and he was a bit of a skeptic when he first joined. And I looked at him, and I saw in the spirit where this guy was going. And I said, you've got to call in business. So the hand of God is on you for business, my friend. And I said, I want to pray for you. And I did. And I gave him a long word as to what I was given about what he'd be doing. And his wife came up to me later on, who had been in our church for a while, and she just said, I can't believe what you just said about David. She said, that is word for word what, pretty much a famous prophet told him 2 years ago. So he's completely astonished right now. He wants to talk to you, and he ended up getting involved in the work. And 3 months later, I was praying for him one time, and I looked at him and I said, a door's going to open for you. I just saw it. I said, a door's going to open for you and you're going to have a lot of money. And he just looked at his head and he had this smile. He goes, I know. I know it. He said, the windows of heaven are opening over my business, over my finances. And about a month later, he comes to see me and he goes, can I have a private meeting with you just between you and I? And he had this kind of smile on his face. And I said, what happened? He said, keep in mind, because he called me he said, I've got a $10,000 options trading account, and generally I've been up and down. I've made a few grand, occasionally I've doubled my account, but generally then I'll lose some. Overall, I've ended up probably barely in front over the years I've been doing. But he said a month ago, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and told me to buy a hold of options on the banks. He said, I just kept looking at it and all I knew was I had to buy options on the bank. So he said, I broke every rule I'd ever done in options trading on my money management and everything. And he said, I just put all my trading account on 4 out of the money options on the banks. Now what that basically means, very high risk trades, stuff that was very unlikely to work. So he said, I pretty much put all my money on the line, my $10,000, which for a builder was at the time was a reasonable amount, not like a lot because he owned a few houses, but still, he said, I put all my options trading account, the money that my wife had allowed me to basically take from the family savings, and put it on 4 ridiculously risky trades. But he said, everything he told me, I knew I was right. And he said, then I just let it go. 3 weeks later, the banks went berserk and moved, and his $10,000 turned into 1.8 million in 3 weeks. And he just came to me and he goes, I kind of need some help because a miracle's happened and I've got to basically get some guidance as to where to go from here. So first thing I said to him was, well, mate, I said, you know about the value of tithing? So where's our share? And he cracked up and he goes, mate, 100 grand's coming your way. And it did. And we kind of laugh because we had a very upfront kind of relationship. But then he ended up paying off all of his debts and having a whole lot left over. So the point was, but the interesting thing was that happened for him was not so much the money that came in, although that was awesome. It was the impact it had on him and his trust in Christ that came out of that whole thing. So huge trust. Yeah, so basically that was the thing. So what actually happened as a result of this miracle was Jesus said to Simon, "Fear not, for henceforth you shall catch men." And when they brought their ships to land, they forsook all and followed him. So there was actually a process that happened here in this madness. So Matthew gives you the impression that Jesus just turns up out of the blue, just says, "Hey dudes, follow me," and walked off. And he goes, "Oh, okay," and they just did. But there was a bit more to it than that. Jesus had actually got to know them clearly. They had met him, they knew him, and then he showed them by an absolute miracle that got their attention. So the biggest thing though about the Dragnet, and what I liked about the Dragnet, and the funny thing is, like I said, I was going to teach it all today, but in light of going slower, I'm not going to finish this parable today. It's just not going to happen. Because I feel that this whole thing about the nets and making this step is a message of today. And the Dragnet, if you think about it, is really that whole network, that system which reaches out into the world. That thing that reaches out into the business world, into your world's calling, into basically doing what you're here to do. And so if you're in business today, right now, it could be that you're just being called to put out your Dragnet right now. That is the message that is being given to you, to step out and do something new. The main thing is, don't live ordinary lives at this time. I don't personally believe you're ever going to get a better time that we've got today to step out and change the world. Because the world as we can see it is falling apart. And it is falling apart very quickly. The business infrastructure that the world appreciates and knows is falling apart in record time. We can see that the way of life that people know is falling apart in record time. So you're never going to get a better opportunity than today to step out and do something crazy. And I'll guarantee you one thing. In days to come, you will love yourself for doing it. I'm sure we would agree that Peter, James, and John never regretted for a minute the choice that they made this day, when they stepped away and left everything to follow Christ. I do not regret for a minute the day that I basically walked away from my law firm and left it behind me. Never for a minute do I regret that. Never for a minute do I regret when I sold half of WealthSafe, stepped away from it, and followed the Council of Nine and began the Awakening Within and City Awakening and doing the work that we're doing today. I now know I'm being called even deeper, to a deeper level. For me, letting go of business systems and trusting and going back to being a right-brain creative man, that's been a scary thing for me. But I'm loving it. I'm actually loving being true to who I really am. And just stepping out and being willing to do the things which seem scary, but you can't lose if you just give it a shot. So this is the whole nature of this parable of the Dragnet today, to really step out and do this. Keep in mind that Satan also knows what we mean by a net. And I put this here. It talks about the networks of the Masonic Lodge and places like that. So the net is also, in a way, a kind of network or system that you're involved in. So the biggest lesson about this Dragnet, above all else, was that in all the scriptures that's mentioned here, it was talking about business and about living the ways of the world, catching the fish, and basically, but then realizing after all of that, that it really was meaningless once you got it. I can remember our business coach telling us that when he sold his business for millions and thought that his life was now made, he said he'd never been so miserable in his life the day after he realized he was financially free. He actually was completely miserable and he just did not know what had happened to him. He was in shock. And he realized it was because He lived an illusion thinking this would solve all of his life problems, and it actually hadn't solved anything. So really, I once heard a very good motivational speaker say this. He said, money only enhances who you really are. So I'll say that again, money only enhances who you already are. If you are a happy, fulfilled person living your higher purpose in your life path, money will enhance it because it gives you more choices. If you're a miserable, angry person who has a vengeful heart, likes to get back at people, likes to curse people, likes to kind of put obligation and shit upon people, money will just give you a better opportunity to do that for people. That is why, in a way, Christ protects us from ourselves when he holds us back from seeing things fulfill in our life, which we've been working towards, to make sure that we really are ready. So today, the message of today is being willing to forsake all, to do whatever it is your heart knows you're called to do. If you know you're called to a higher work and to teach and to do energy work and to do clearings, like I know Lexi's now realizing, you just step out and just do it. And just know it's going to work. Know that your higher self that you will love yourself in years to come when you look back and see yourself having lived the life of doing what you want to do. I look back and I love myself for what I did at that time then. I love myself for stepping out and taking that step when I did with that law firm. Who here, by the way, has taken a big step in their life? I'm talking about people who feel to do it, have already taken a really big step sometime in the past, which went against everything that you were comfortable with, but scared the crap out of you. But when you look back, you love yourself for doing it because it changed your life. Yeah, Sammy's hand right up over here. Yeah, Brooke, yep. Famita, Alex, yep. It's the best feeling, isn't it? In fact, Grace and I always laugh because we moved to Melbourne in 2000 for me to take a job in a big law firm. And it didn't work out for me. And I can remember that nevertheless, we were pretty settled in Melbourne. And I can remember we flew back to Perth for Christmas to see my family. And Mum, and we were telling Mum at lunch about how much we love Melbourne, how we'd got business underway, we'd set up a mortgage broking firm, things were working, and how, you know, we're really looking forward to, you know, seeing a successful life in Melbourne. And Mum was going like, that's really great, you know. And then she realized she'd run out of milk, and she goes, oh, I've run out of milk. So Grace said, oh, we'll go down and get some if you want, Penny. And Mum goes, okay. So Grace and I left the house and went for a walk down the shops. It was a 10-minute walk. And I remember as we were walking, we were saying, it's actually nice to be back, isn't it? And she's saying, yeah. And I'm saying, yeah, I've missed Perth. And she's saying, yeah, so have I. And we went and got our milk. And then as we were walking back, she's like, yeah, well, especially now that William's on the way, because, you know, she was pregnant at the time. William hadn't yet come out. And she said, it'd be nice to be around family more. She said, we've got to come back here a little bit more. And I said, yeah. I said, I don't know, maybe we should just come back here. And she goes, yeah, actually, why don't we? I said, I said, okay. I said, why don't we just move back? She goes, yeah. And we got home and told Mum how we're moving back to Perth. And I think my mum thought we'd gone completely off our rocker. Literally, that was our decision-making process. It was instant. It was straight away. There was no hesitation. And this is the kind of thing that it takes. And I'm sure all of you know what I mean. When you just take these instant decisions, no matter how crazy they are, and just trust yourself, it's just the best feeling. So that's the moral of today of part 1 of the Dragnet series today. So be willing to cast your net out and basically take a risk. Because when you cast the Dragnet out into the sea, you are taking a risk. You don't know if you're going to catch any fish. You don't know if what you're going to do is going to work. The truth is it might not work. But that's the reality of life when you think about it. That's the beauty and the joy of life and how it works. You don't know if that person that you're dating is going to work. You don't know if that marketing funnel is going to work. The first marketing funnel I invested $18,000 in a marketing funnel. It failed completely. I didn't get a single sale from it of any value. And I was so mad about it at the time. But my second marketing funnel, which I invested $30,000 into, made a heap of money. The point was, imagine if I'd been burnt by my first marketing funnel failing. So the point is today is that whatever it is you feel like you're being called into, just cast out your net into the sea and give it a shot. Just give it a shot. And I could just about all of you here who I know, at some level here, I know this can relate to. I know, Steve Plummer, you're certainly casting your Dragnet out right now and going way beyond your comfort zone. And I'm sure it's scary. I'm sure you're feeling terrified. I'm sure you probably think you're crazy. I'm sure some people in your family sometimes think you've gone completely off your rocker. But deep down, you can see you're loving it. And Alex loves to scare himself. Yeah, look, Alex, I think it's just stepping out and doing things as you've learned. And that's what's going to get the job done in these times, is not being afraid to step out and live by instinct and just do it. Just take a risk and give things a shot. So this is the last slide I'll be showing today on this one here, because the rest of it, like I said, I'm going to go next. We're going to continue in 2 weeks' time. So cast into the sea, throwing, taking action. The sea is the world. Without it, growth, as Alex said, is outside our comfort zone. So Jesus basically took his disciples, he cast them out, he showed them the miracle, and then told them to follow him. And it really is the final conclusion of the parable of the pearl of great price and the parable of the treasure. So you want to be that one who's casting out the dragnet. You don't want to be caught up in the good and bad. You just want to be the one casting the dragnets and getting the job done. On that note, I am going to just move along to a code now. Like I said, I was planning to do this and just ask any questions, thoughts, anything like that. So what have we got here? Hallelujah. Is there any comments? Like, what's been your greatest learning today? Before we do a bit of a code activation, what's been your biggest learning today? I'd love everyone to share your one biggest learning or your one biggest lesson or one biggest action you're going to take. Or if you want to take the mic, feel free to take it. Sheldon, going more within. Yep. You're definitely being called on that path, mate. I can see that. Christine Evans, very interesting perspective. Biggest thing is regarding change. Fiona, we don't have a choice in our path and really going more within as well. That's actually my theory, Fiona. I don't believe if we really connect with our higher self, we do have much choice in our path. We know what we're here to do. Our only decision is whether we follow it or not. Let's just say when I had my experience with the Council of Nine and with the higher angels, they were very clear with me. They said this to me. I said, don't I have free will? They said, nope. Anyone else before we, well, we've only got 3 people sharing their biggest lesson or learning today. Okay. Fiona, I need a sledgehammer to, is that Fiona or Famita? Fiona, I need a sledgehammer to wake me up, lol. Yeah, maybe ask Darren. I'm sure he could help you, Fiona, on that one. What's this one? Alex, I'm going heavy back to my creative makerspace, letting go to get help from others. Yep, I like that, Alex. Christine, I agree about free will. We talked about yesterday. Famita, just to cast the net. Yep. Miko, need to trust God's plan for me. Yeah. Fiona, no, he's too strong. So today, let's just cast our nets out, everyone. Let's just get our nets out and let's just cast them. So here we are. So this is the code that we've been using, which everyone really likes at the moment. Who likes this particular code, by the way? Yeah, this is a great one, this. This is a specially designed code in recent times. Activates your higher transitionary light body. So really just let this code go deep into your unconscious. So this has got a lot of indigo and purple in it. So what it's doing, this will activate your etheric chakra. It will activate your indigo third eye. It's also activating around your 9th and 10th chakra, this one. This is a very powerful one. Don't be surprised if it really opens up new realms and new layers and you start to see things. So just really feel this one activating you. So it's activating your 9th, your 10th, your 7th, your 6th, and your 8th chakras, this one. This is really effective to activate you right through the portal. So just focus your attention into the center of it and breathe deeply into your third eye. It's releasing old patterns, old paradigms, old energies. Just feel it go right through your third eye I can see it going right through people's minds. And if you feel brave enough, just enter into the vortex of that code. I'm just seeing a very pure realm of the cosmos in this one as I'm going in. Very centered, very quiet. There's not really much happening here. Not much activity at all, actually. It's just a very quiet, centered space. Going into a centered, what I'm seeing is the Orion belt, the Pleiades, the cosmos, moving into a higher light vibration. I'm actually going to read a scripture which I'm getting, Psalm 27. So as you keep going into the vortex, I'm going to read some scripture activations over you. And I'm going to start with Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I see? Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, evil ones, the archons surrounded me and attacked my mind, attacked my energy, attacked my fortress, attacked every part of me, they stumbled and fell. Though a host may surround me and encompass me, my heart will not fear. Though spiritual war of the dark may break out against me, in this I will be confident. One thing I've asked, and that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and inquire in the beauty of his temple. From the day of trouble they surrounded me. For the day of trouble, you've hidden me in your pavilion. You set me on the tabernacle, you set me high upon a rock. Therefore shall my head be lifted up high above my enemies who surround me. I will offer sacrifices of joy. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises with my whole being. I'm also going to activate this command that all the positive implants coming from this code into each and every one be activated in each person's right now to increase each person's frequency, high vibration to repel, and to open up more energy, more frequency, more vibration to repel anything that is not aligned with this frequency. I command all spirit guides and demons and energies that do not align with the order of Melchizedek, with the order of Enoch, and the office of Christ and the blood of Christ to be released now from all people, from all levels, all layers, all incarnations, all multi-dimensions, all implants of any kind, but do not align with his highest order and all levels now. Whew, it's better. William and I were just seeing a lot of dark matter and dark energies attacking people. It is commanded that all compassionate connections, all auric attachments that do not align with the higher good be released in all levels and all layers now. What I'm also going to do is I command that all karmic patterning, fault finding, or fetters of karma between anyone in this group and any of us be released and cleared in all levels and all dimensions now. I call in Archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Archangel Metatron, Archangel Sarapondon, and all other archangels to clear and release all energies and all entities that do not align with the higher work now, but are blocking people and blocking anyone here from doing their path on all levels and all dimensions now. That's better. I take authority over Satan and over Lucifer and the morning star and bind his works through the power of the name of Christ and the blood of Christ over each layers and all levels in the heavenlies and in the earthly realms, in all of our works and all of the things that we're doing now. And I just command and pray the blood of Christ over each and every one of us who are serving Christ and working in that higher Christ dimension now. A lot is clearing, everyone, so just keep feeling this. A lot of warfare happening right now, if you can feel it. There's wars in the heavenlies going on right now. See, Lucifer's power is being really bound up over people here today. Because we have no authority over Lucifer other than through Christ. But in Christ, we have that. Not sure what anyone else is feeling, but we're in such a nice, deep place right now. I just was sharing with Grace privately. I've been in a private room or realm of the cosmos and the heavenlies for quite some time now, and really just getting myself centered. Being given really great, really lovely messages actually. Being told to really become more accountable for my own work and my own energy. If anyone else is getting anything, just feel free to type in the text chat or anything else that you're seeing or feeling. It's going to continue to allow it to do its work. Just type in the text chat how you all going, everyone. Are you still integrating? Are you still feeling, or do you feel? Just type in the chat what you're feeling. If you feel that the work's been completed today, I can actually feel there's been a lot of work happening today with the archangels and clearings. For me, the crown chakra cleared, energy is coming from higher realms. Yep. Alex, very calm, done. Yep, I would agree with that. Yep, Sheldon's the same. I agree. Feeling joy, done. No, I agree. I feel that the work's been finished today. So thank you, everyone. For those of you who feel to give, that's our stuff to give. And thank you for coming today again. And Christine was very sleepy, but got practical tips all done for now. Sam has to rewatch, no problem. Yep. So thank you, everyone. And have a really good rest of the Sunday or rest of Saturday or rest of the weekend, wherever you are in what part of the world. And look forward to seeing you all next time.